Eric, can you hear us? You're muted, but okay, I got the message. Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd, 2023 meeting of Cohasset Conservation Commission. I'm Chris McFarland, acting chair of the commission. We'll be running tonight's meeting as we implement Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act, Cohasset Stormwater Management, and Wetlands Protection Bylaws. We're operating tonight's meeting using the Zoom platform and ask the public who wish to speak to either raise their hand and be recognized or enter your question or comment into the chat box. Please include your name and address. Only those with name and address will be recognized. Present this evening on behalf of the Conservation Commission are our Conservation Administrator, Angela Giso, and Town Conservation Agent, Charlotte Patel. I'll now take a roll call of Conservation Commissioners. Please respond by repeating your name and saying present. Kathy Berrigan.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Eric Eisenhower.
Eric Eisenhower, present.
Chris McIntyre.
Chris McIntyre, present.
Chris McFarland, present. Will Ashton and Tom Bell are not present this evening. We have a quorum of 4 commissioners. We'll take all votes via roll call. Our first hearing this evening is new, so I have to read it into the public record. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetland Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, June 22nd, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. via remote participation on the Zoom platform for Notice of Intent 23-18 and Stormwater Permit 23-13 for Jason and Lisa Zatmary to raise and rebuild a single-family dwelling at 31-35 Elm Street. That's it. So, Charlotte, if you would promote whomever is going to be presenting this evening, appreciate it.
Hi, Brendan. Hi, Jason.
Hi, Brendan Sullivan with Merrill Associates. Here also with the owner Jason Zatmary of 31 and 35 Elm Street. Let me pull up. I'll first pull up the existing conditions plan. The other plan is a little busy, so maybe I'll start with this one.
Brendan, can I interrupt for a second?
Sorry, sure.
So this is 31 and 35, or is it 31 through 35?
Well, it's not 31. It's, I think.
I just want to make it clear for the record.
Yes, I think it's 31 and 35, not 31 through. It's usually we do a dash, but it's, you know.
I think it's 31, at least I've seen it 31 through 35. So 31, 33, 35, because it's a 3, it is currently a 3-family.
Yeah, I think there are 3 units. So I think we
Okay.
have it correct, 31 through 35.
Well, that would also include 32 and 34, so.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
31,
31,
33,
33,
35.
35, yeah.
Okay, for the record, thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's right.
We all know where we are. We're on the right side of the street anyway.
Yeah.
So the existing structure is just a few doors down from Elm Street, across the street from the police station, on the south side of Elm Street. Currently has more or less 2 driveways serving the house. There's the driveway on the east side. It's actually shared by the existing number 37 to the east. And then the main driveway is on the west side, which comes in off the street and curls around the back of the house, and is a parking area down behind the existing dwelling. Resource areas we have is we have a riverfront associated with James Brook, 100-foot inner riparian and 100-foot outer riparian. We also have a BVW associated with James Brook, wetlands that was delineated. Of course, we have our 50 and our 100-foot buffers associated with those. We also have a floodplain, elevation 9, associated with the river. kind of goes across the property and cuts through the bottom portion.
Excuse me, Brendan, before you go on, could you once again show where the 50 and the 100, excuse me, yeah, the 50 and the 100 are there? You
The
very
50
rapidly
is
skipped over
the-
the lines.
I'm sorry, the green lines right here, there's the 50, and there's the 100 over here. The
Oh,
wetland is this kind of zigzagging blue line down here as it goes down into the James Brook bank down in here.
Okay,
So we got the 50, we got the 100, we have our floodplain elevation 9. We have our 100-foot inner and 100-foot outer, which is a 200-foot riverfront area. Alrighty. So then we'll jump on to the proposed plan. Didn't you see that?
Yes,
Okay, great. So that's why I just wanted to show the existing conditions, because there's a lot going on here. So we did leave the existing building underneath to give you a perspective of where the new house is going. So we're taking out the driveway that comes around the back of the house. We're taking down the existing house. We have a new footprint proposed with a garage. Basically, if you look at it, the area of the living space, the footprint of the existing house and the living footprint of the proposed house is the same. It's within 30 square feet of each other. I say the only addition is the 24 by 24 garage on the side, and a three-season porch in the back. We also have a proposed patio around the back as well. So there's actually a net decrease of impervious across the site by over 300 square feet. So really no stormwater controls are required for recharge, infiltration, or anything like that. So where our flows down to James Brook are less post-construction than they are existing today. We do need, so there is our disturbance, our alteration within the riverfront is about 1,800 square feet. So that's why we're requiring a variance from the, because the Cohasset bylaw only allows 1,000 square feet of alteration in the riverfront. We're proposing about 1,800. And that area is basically the area that was lawn that will be structure constructed over that. We went through a number of iterations with this. I mean, we could realistically take the footprint and put it almost over where it is now, and so we wouldn't need that variance, but it wouldn't suit the needs of the owner. And we are centering the house more on the lot, pushing it further away from James Brook and the wetlands, getting it up out of the floodplain. So we think this is a positive for everybody here. I think that's really about it.
so Brendan,
Brendan, yeah.
go ahead.
You go ahead, Chris, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering, you mentioned the needs of the owner are not met by relocating the structure in its previous position. What are those needs that are not met?
Well, I mean, maybe not the needs, but maybe the best location of the house for the lot. The house right now it's about 10 feet off the property line on the easterly side.
Yeah.
This garage is it's defined as right on the property line from the abutter. The driveway here it's just kind of, there's a lot going on this corner right over here.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense to pull everything away from there. I know, I mean, not to say you don't care about zoning. We do have an application in for zoning. We're in front of them next month. But it does make the lot, it does make the house more conforming with respects to zoning on the lot, as far as side setbacks go.
Okay.
Brendan, you said there's 1,800 square feet of alteration.
Yes.
Could you kind of outline how you came to that number?
So that's the number of the proposed footprint over the existing lawn, which is this area, this area in here. So the alteration, what we're calling alteration, is anything that is vegetated that we're proposing as impervious. I know some of the patio is an allowed accessory alteration under the Wetlands Protection Act. So it's really just a new structure over the existing lawn area. I'm not counting the roof over roof or a part of the structure that's over the existing driveway. So those have been eliminated, and other areas that are being regraded, that are landscaped and will be landscaped after the fact.
But you're saying that's based on your interpretation of the Wetland Protection Act or the Cohasset bylaws?
Both.
Because Charlotte, can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I guess I'm still just a little confused. So in terms of the total alteration, at least looking at the reference in the Wetlands Protection Act and 310 CMR 10.02, those activities are listed as minor within the buffer zone. And we're in a resource area, so there's land subject to coastal storm flowage and riverfront area. And then in addition to that, our bylaws does expand on the definition of alter a little bit more, which includes, fill, anything, changing drainage, which is already similar in the act to begin with. So I guess with just the regrading and everything else, I understand the roof over roof, but, in terms of changing impervious to pervious, pervious to lawn, or removing impervious, replacing with lawn, at least it doesn't seem like that's a minor activity, how it's defined in the act when it says minor activities in the buffer zone. And then our bylaw has a wider definition, including, more examples of the definition of alter. So sorry, Brendan, I guess I'm just a little confused with, the total square footage of alteration. I know we need a variance here either way if it meets the rare and unusual circumstances, but, just to kind of ensure what the total square footage of alteration is in the resource areas specifically, since we're only dealing with a small portion of the, a sort of smaller portion of the 100-foot buffer, but a lot of this work is directly in a resource area.
Right, so from my understanding, the riverfront, under the Wetlands Protection Act, the riverfront section does refer to that 10.2 as minor activities. And a lot of those, it refers to all of those, and namely, changing, impervious, changing lawn area to, and they specifically mentioned patios as an accessory use to a dwelling, as well as sheds and other things as well.
Does it say riverfront? I mean, I could have the wrong section, but I'm looking at 10.02. I don't know the full reference, but it says activities within the buffer zone, and it lists them as minor. You are correct there, but it says within 100 feet, and it says solely within the buffer zone as described. And then it lists, of course, the
Right,
stuff that you just mentioned.
but I'm saying section 10.5.8 riverfront refers to those minor activities under that section.
Okay, but then did you still looked at the definition of alter in our bylaw? Because we list more examples, and I don't think we've ever not considered removing impervious and regrading a site as not defining it as alter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I was just looking at it, your wetland regs online, the alter definition I see on page 3 pretty much references the Wetlands Protection Act. Is there something I'm not looking at there?
I'm referring to the bylaw in I think it's like 260-8. It lists more, well, granted, the Wetlands Protection Act says including but not limited to, as does the bylaw, so it's not really confined to the exact definition of what's written in the act or the bylaw, but
Yep.
at least in our bylaw section under alter, we have more examples of what alter is. And so at least with a lot of this work, it seems like it still fits that definition regardless of what the act says.
Okay, but then it'll be a matter of, so if it's defined as alteration, once again, if the act defines that alteration is a minor activity and it's an allowed use within the 200-foot riverfront, then it shouldn't apply. Correct?
I still think you have to be looking at it through the finer lens of the bylaw too. I mean, yes, you are correct in terms of the regulations. We defer to the riverfront with the exception of 1,000 square foot limitation unless a variance is granted. But, I'm going by the definition of bylaw, the definition of alter in our bylaw that does list out more examples of altering, which includes, you know, adding and removing fill, which again is what we're doing around the back of the home here.
Right,
And it
right.
also includes, you know, the removal of impervious or anything like that. So it lists it like, you know, a very broad definition in terms of, you know, changing drainage patterns as well. So I guess it's just really, you know, honing in on the total square footage of alteration that we're dealing with here. I think either way, it's still over 1,000 in the riverfront area and within land subject to coastal storm flowage. So that's what the commission would need to consider if they wanted to grant a variance. But, you know, I was still confused by the numbers, I guess, you know, because, you know, also in your stormwater application, it's listing, you know, disturbance, but it's like, I think it was like something like what, 10, 12,000 square feet of
Yeah,
disturbance?
yeah, it's in the 12,000 square foot range, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
So really, I guess, since the majority of the properties in the riverfront, I think it's just, you know, I don't think we've seen people not counting alter as, you know, again, completely regrading an area and changing the drainage, I guess, for stormwater specifically, but also, you know, at least under the act, we've always, you know, gone with, at least to my knowledge, we've gone with a stricter definition under our bylaw.
Charlotte, can I also ask you, what the regulation is for fill within the floodplain?
Um,
Or,
I-
I mean, it's not, the floodplain's not the right word. This is
the land subject to coastal storm flowage.
Yeah, yes.
I'm not entirely sure. I just know they don't have performance standards to, you know, that are, you know, evaluated as part of stormwater. But in terms of fill, sorry, Chris, I'm not sure. I can double check the act real quick, but I don't think it's not necessarily not allowed, but I don't know if there's any limitations.
We need to look at that because I know there is concern about fill within that area.
Okay.
All right. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, another thing that's not clear to me is the alteration of vegetation, which is, you know, one of the things that we would look at. It looks like vaguely like there's some trees that would be in, you know, have to be removed for this new footprint. Not really clearly defined here unless I'm missing it, but speak to that somewhat, Mr. Sullivan.
Sure. Yeah, so there are two trees. Maybe if I go back to the existing conditions plan. So there's a 30-inch triple tree here next to the house, the existing house, and there's a 20-inch tree here. Both of those were planning to be removed as they both fall within the footprint of the new dwelling. So just those two trees. Most of this is, like I say, landscape lawn that goes all the way down, you know, to a tree line down at the back of the property, you know, down inside the 50-foot buffer. So really just those two trees we'd be removing. And we're replacing them with we have two trees down here proposed. And like I said, I can get together with Charlotte and figure out the exact alteration, what we should be calling alteration, what we shouldn't be. And maybe, the only mitigation we're showing on the plan right now is the two trees in the rear. Be more than happy to do some mitigation plantings down towards, the river along the tree line there, to supplement some of the, for the variance request.
Brendan, Eric here. I see the outline of the former house. I see where the new house is. What happens to the area underneath the former house?
Well, that will be filled in and graded as shown.
So that will become pervious now.
Yes. Yeah, the
You
entire footprint outside of that, yes.
Okay, so you've calculated that as the offset to the incremental impervious of the house building? Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell me, homes in this area often are elevated, whereby there is a flow through. So there's no basement and there's a flow through in case of floods and all of that. I assume if that's the case, then what's underneath the house is considered to be pervious. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, say it again. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
well, homes in this area very often are elevated. They're they're not on, what you would call it, a foundation. There's a good, 3 feet high, all right, so the water can flow through in the case of floods. All right, I assume in that case, what's under the house becomes pervious? Is that correct?
Yes, that isn't the case. Yeah, there's a full, I don't know about a full foundation. There's at least a crawl space in the basement. Right now, it's a walkout back.
Yeah,
So there's a threshold in front and down back, threshold in front is about elevation, maybe looks like 17, 18. Threshold in the back is about elevation 7.
so,
So it's a walkout back. It's not up on piles or anything. This house was built in probably the 1800s or
okay,
something.
so the new house will
The new
be
house, yes.
elevated? Is the new house going to be elevated
Is it gonna be elevated? Well, yes, it's
off the
gonna be,
ground, off the ground, so that as you find in a lot of houses in that area, in case of flood, the water flows through underneath the house?
oh, no. We're outside of the floodplain, so there'll be the new house will not be in the floodplain at all. It'll be up out of the floodplain. It'll be a walk through. So actually, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So it will be a walkout back.
Okay, so it's on a foundation,
Yes,
so underneath the house will be impervious,
yes.
okay.
So just, I'm gonna paraphrase and Brendan, I'm gonna ask you to look at section 31 of the wetland regulation, Cohasset Wetland Regulations, which is floodplain and land subject to flooding. It goes through the whole explanation of why floodplains are important. And at the last paragraph, it said, land subject to flooding contain vegetative areas similar in every respect to a BVW. Such vegetative wetland areas shall be presumed to involve the same characteristics and protected interest as do BVWs, and shall be subject to regulation under section 24 above, and will have a 25-foot buffer zone. So if the AEX line, if that is the I believe it's the 100-year floodplain.
Yep.
Then that would have a 25-foot buffer zone to it. Based on section 31,
Okay.
which puts it into the edge of your house a little.
So, well, no, the buffer zone. So that doesn't mean the floodplain extends into the house.
It says that the floodplain will have a 25-foot buffer zone to it. Similar to a BVW.
Correct, but that doesn't mean the house is in the floodplain.
No, but it would be in the buffer
Buffer zone.
zone to the floodplain.
Okay.
Oh.
I tell you, I mean, I don't know how many notice of intents I've submitted, and I've never shown a 25-foot buffer to the floodplain.
Well,
But
okay, I'll just ask you to look at that more closely. And
Yep. I
the
certainly can.
other thing I'm going to ask, if you would, if you could take a drawing, I guess this drawing, and if you could outline, and I'm not asking for this tonight, I'm going to ask you to continue this hearing. I'm going to ask you to outline what your interpretation of the area of what would you
Alteration?
Is that what you
Alteration?
said? Yeah, if you
Yep.
could, it would be helpful, because I think that part of the difficulty in looking at this is that I think it's pretty well conceived that the area of alteration on this property is everything within the silt sock. Minus maybe the 2 trees to the left, because you think you're going to save them, which which concerns me, is the fact that the silt sock would be on the other side of the trees you're hoping to protect. So there's no doubt that this entire area will be altered. The question is how you're defining alteration versus how Charlotte's defining alteration.
Right.
So if you could prepare just an exhibit that actually shows that. The other thing I'm wondering about the drainage pattern, the pre and post drainage pattern. There seems to be a much larger area, and I could be wrong, but it seems to be a much larger area of drainage, which is heading off to 37. And I'm just wondering if that has been looked at as a
Yeah, so the current this yard over here, the side, if I go back to the existing condition, this just from this concrete walkway, it just slopes right down and it goes down into their driveway and onto their property.
Yeah.
As well as, most of this portion of the house. What we proposed over there is, I don't know if you can tell, but
So,
there's a
so
little-
I'm sorry. So you're saying that there are currently downspouts that are daylighting and going there?
I don't know for sure, but I know the landscaping generally goes in that direction. But if you can tell by so we've kind of curled the topography, the proposed topography, to create a little swale so that the water, is from coming down off this lawn now will go down and be channeled and stay on our property as opposed to going onto their driveway adjacent, and keeping it away from their garage as well.
Could you zoom in there a little bit, please? That's fine.
Yeah, so this little hook here
Yeah.
is an indication of creating a swale at the toe of the slope, so the water will come down and stay on our property, as opposed to what it now does is going onto their property and across their driveway. And the fill in the floodplain, I think I've calculated it out. I mean, I think the area below, so if we take the floodplain as elevation 9, right? The area that's existing below 9 and what we're proposing fill below elevation 9 is about the same. Because keep in mind, this threshold is down at elevation 7. So it's 2 feet below the floodplain. And right now there's no flood vents there or anything. So, but I can, like I said, I understand what you're saying, Chris, and I can outline that altar area, and I can come up with some quantities of fill and put it in perspective for you.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Tell me, the swale that you're building in, where does that drain to? It looks like it drains to the garage, the existing garage.
No, I can emphasize that a little more, maybe put a note on there, but it'll drain to the backyard. In the staging and stockpiling area, we go down through that area.
It's sloping to the right, correct? And I can see where the swale stops, Brendan. And I would assume at that point, it still slopes to the right, which is where the garage is. Or are you going to have a trench that goes down roughly to the wetland area?
No, well, because see this contour 7 comes up and wraps around here, so it's kind of a swale there now. It's kind of a swale in this area here.
I'm glad
Oh.
you can see it. I can't. That's all right. I'll have to
Well,
believe you.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, once again, we can emphasize the swale on that side and put a note there to make sure that, nothing was onto the adjacent property.
Okay.
Any other questions at this time? Anyone from the public like to speak? So Brendan, I'm going to ask that we continue this hearing. Our next, well, would like to continue to July. What's the date we're looking at, Charlotte?
Our next two hearings are July 6th and July 20th.
Okay. I mean, I'd be willing to put it on for July 6th. I can't promise there'll be a hearing that night, but we can put it on for there. Is that acceptable, Brendan?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, just a little more clarity so we can just understand very clearly how this is. In the meantime, Charlotte will spend a little more time as well, and we'll hopefully be able to resolve this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to.
Okay.
Go over with
Renee, could
Charlotte
you
what's,
also,
what's an alteration and not.
for the outer 200-foot riparian zone, is that supposed to be the riverfront area? Is that what we're calling? Is that the riverfront?
Yes,
Yeah, actually, it should be the outer 100 riparian zone, but yeah, the inner
Just
is
clean
100
that-
inner, and then there's
If
a
those could-
100
I was getting
outer.
a little confused looking at the key, the key, not to nitpick, but just, I was trying to look up the regs and, wasn't, just, just match the, what it's called for the outer zone.
Right.
Thank you.
Brendan, as far as I understand it, the southern portion of the property, which is the bottom of the drawing we're looking at, that is lawn?
Yes, this is all lawn.
Lawn. And
Um,
the lawn is within the 50-foot buffer zone?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
there's also a 30-foot sewer, there's a sewer easement that goes through here too, which is the town sewer easement that. It's all the sewer that comes down from the center of town to the plant.
Yeah, that's a buried pipe, is it not?
Yes,
Or a
Yep.
conduit or whatever, yeah, yeah.
yes.
and they're connected to that?
Yeah, they connected the sewer in Elm Street.
Oh, in Elm Street. Oh,
Yeah.
Interesting, okay. All right. All right,
Brendan, James Brook is the stream we're talking about?
Yes, not a stream, it's a river, but yeah.
Okay, river, yeah. Whereabouts actually can you see that from the surface on your map? Visible, or is it in a pipe, or what's going on here?
Oh
Is
no,
it-
you can see it. There's a marsh down there.
Yeah.
It flows down in this area down in here generally. It's got defined banks in this area. There's marsh on either side of it. On this side of Elm Street, it pretty much abuts the properties in the rear. And then there's, on the other side of it, there's hundreds of feet of marsh before it gets to, over by Summer Street and the properties over by the Catholic Church and over in that area.
Most of this area is inhabited with Phragmites, is it not? Is it not?
Um,
Am I wrong?
yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, and the Phragmites would go how far up the drawing you have here? Where is the line of the Phragmites?
Oh, I don't know, to tell you the truth. This is,
There's a small patch sorry to interrupt you, Brendan. There's a small
Sure.
patch to the southeast, in like the southeast corner. It may be on an abutting property, but at least in terms of the back of this property, it's mostly wooded with, native, non-native vegetation, trees. And the Phragmites is like pushed further back.
Okay. So we have no question here of you dealing with the invasives or Phragmites or any project of that nature.
no, that we're not involved in any of that,
Okay.
as far as I know. The new owners, they purchased the property back in March of this year, so they haven't been there too long.
Yeah, I think with the, Brendan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the limit of work is pretty much defined by the erosion control barrier, and it's pretty much in the grass almost entirely, correct? I don't think you're cutting back any further woods.
Okay, all right.
Unless I'm mistaken, but at least looking at it on site, there's a strip of grass between the driveway that they're going to remove in the back, and then there's a strip of grass behind that, and then after that, it becomes all wood. So, Brendan, we're not cutting down any additional, wooded stuff in the back, I don't think, right? It's all grassy area,
Exactly, yep. Well, we're not.
with the exception of the trees, obviously, in the house outline, but
Yes.
yeah.
All right.
all right, so we're going to continue this hearing until July 6th. Thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Before we go on, I just want to mention for anyone who's listening in, there are two items on the agenda, NOI 2315 for Government Island Wharf improvements and a show cause for 76 Lampard Lane. Those have both been continued till July. I'm sorry, the second is till July 20th. And the wharf improvement is till August 3rd. So those will not be heard tonight.
Okay.
Our next hearing this evening is NOI 23-17, Stormwater Permit 23-10. This is 74 Forest Avenue, continued from June 8th. This is the development of a horse barn and paddock.
Good evening, everyone. James Garfield here with Morse Engineering, representing the applicant for this project at 74 Forest Avenue. Jeff Hassett presented this project at a previous hearing for you guys, but unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. So I'll pull the plan up and we can discuss some changes that have been made since then. Okay, can everybody see that?
And
Okay. So at the previous hearing, the commission asked that we take a look to see if there were potential wetlands to the north of this property. We contacted Brad Holmes of ECR. He took a look at that area. There is a wetland north of the property, but it's approximately 200 to 300 feet away. So specific changes that have been made to the plan, we relabeled the fenced in area as proposed paddock. We have revised the, previously we showed just a berm down gradient of the proposed paddock. Now we're proposing a berm as well as a crushed stone trench. The crushed stone trench will have a perforated PVC pipe embedded within it, and that'll help to further redirect the water away from the BVW. We're proposing 4 native trees, which are shown all within the 100-foot wetland buffer here. Just outside of the proposed paddock. And we are also proposing a buffer enhancement planting area directly adjacent to the tree line. And that will consist of shrubs as well as native wildflower and grass seed mix. So we believe those changes have addressed the comments that the commission has made. And it should also be noted that this project's been approved by the Board of Health. So with that, I'll pass it back to you for any questions.
okay, thank you. So does the PVC pipe daylight at the driveway or what?
So it's
There's
actually,
another gravel trench there. Is that correct?
that's correct. So there's an existing gravel trench along the paved driveway there, and we're basically just tying into that. Just to essentially slow the flow of the water as it eventually will get back to the board, the BVW.
Uh-huh. Okay. And I assume those initials have something to do with the species of trees, is that right?
They do. There's a legend at the top of the page here. Plant list. So, you know, we've got 1 silver maple, 2 sugar maples, and 1 river birch.
Okay.
And James, sorry for not noticing this earlier, but initially when the project was submitted, you weren't requesting a variance, you know, but given our comments at the last meeting, obviously we're putting a few plantings in the 50-foot buffer. So the commission, if they approve the project, would need to grant a variance here just for the you know, minor planting work in the 50.
Yeah, for clarification, what would those be replacing? And that's existing lawn or in the 50, where we'll be planting it? Grass?
They will be planted within existing lawn, yes.
So, but that's not mitigation planting, right? That's just a additional planting that's been,
So the trees are mitigation for the proposed trees that are to be removed that are currently there. Yeah. And then further mitigation on top of that's just the buffer enhancement planting area.
okay. Eric, Kathy, any questions?
No. Been through this.
Just one question. At the last hearing, Jeff was talking about possibly evening out the slope near the 50, so the water wouldn't run that way. Because we're, obviously concerned about this paddock being right on the 50. Did you not continue to consider that, or did you feel like what you just presented was good enough for
So,
that?
yeah, so my apologies. Jeff obviously was the one who presented at the last hearing, so I kind of
Yeah.
give my best assumption to that
Okay.
point.
Okay, no problem.
So Jeff previously proposed just a berm along the down gradient side of the proposed paddock. He's since
Right.
added this crushed stone trench. So I'm assuming that was his, I guess, answer to that question was to,
Mm,
capture and just a tiny low point before the water was to run off away from the paddock. And then infiltrate that water into that crushed stone trench and redirect it.
Yeah, but I believe that's what he and Tom talked about, so.
Yeah, they were also talking about possibly,
Firming it a little.
yes, and leveling out the land so that the flow would go basically in the other direction, because now
Well,
it's,
I think they did.
yeah.
I think the 119 contour actually does that. So that they pulled the 119 across and so it actually does kind of flow more towards the gravel at the driveway than it does directly towards the wetland. So I think that is part of the solution.
Okay. If that's the case,
I think so.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions from commissioners? Anyone from the public? Having no other questions from the commission or the public, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing and to issue an order of conditions for NOI 23-17. I don't believe we have any special conditions, Charlotte, other than the standard conditions, including the use or the non-use of herbicides, pesticides, et cetera.
Yeah, we have our standard boilerplate, and then I'll just note that there is a long-term operation and maintenance plan for the site as part of the stormwater permit, in addition to the stable management plan that they that they submitted and presented.
Okay, so we'll just make note that for the order of conditions for the NOI, that the management plan becomes part of the conditions.
Okay.
So do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and second, we'll issue an order of conditions for NOI 23-17. We'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0. We also will issue a stormwater permit.
Sorry,
20
Chris, we also need a variance for just the minor planting work in the 50. Sorry.
That's fine. I was gonna get to it, but.
Oh, you're
fine.
gonna do it last. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's all right. We'll go to that one. I'll make a motion to issue a variance for the planting of trees and trees, shrubs and ground cover within the 50-foot buffer. All that work should be done without mechanical means. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and second, we'll take a roll call. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0. And a motion to issue a stormwater permit 23-10 for 74 Forest Avenue. Do I have a second?
Second,
Having a motion and a second, we'll take a roll call vote. Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 400. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next hearing this evening is a show cause hearing for Beechwood Street, continued from May 11, 2023.
Just promoting everyone here. Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to throw you off your groove.
Right.
There we go. How are we doing, Charlotte? Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, we can hear you, Joe. Just can't see you.
Hang on. There we go. Bear with me a second.
All right.
There we go. All right, good. Good evening, everyone. Joe Iantosca. I am here with Brad Holmes from ECR. And joining me tonight is Matthew Watsky, who's my attorney. Based on comments from the prior hearing that we had back on May 11th, Brad has submitted additional information that's relating to the tree canopy at the property, because that was a significant issue that came up at the last meeting. He's also revised his restoration proposal, and we submitted it last week for your review. I hope you had an opportunity to review that. With that said, I would turn this over to Brad and let him explain the information that he's provided and elaborate on his restoration proposal.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Joe. Good evening, members of the commission. I'll share my screen and pull up the plans.
Brad, could I just ask you to state your name for the record?
Sure. Brad Holmes with ECR.
Thank you.
Get things out of the way. At the last meeting, as Joe had mentioned, we reviewed the proposed restoration plan to address the trees that were cut in the BBW in the buffer zone. And we discussed the loss of the tree canopy at the site, and we discussed doing an analysis and coming back to the commission. So what we've done is to gather information from pre-existing and existing conditions to come back to the commission with a canopy analysis. So this sheet here would be 2001 Mass GIS image. The site prior to the cutting event that happened in early spring of this year, showing the existing lot line. Here's the lot, the focus area of the lot. This would be in and around April of 2021. This is available data from Mass GIS, so we use this to show the pre-existing conditions. The next sheet is our drone image from I think it was June 7th. That overlays the same data, an overhead aerial view of the drone image showing the existing conditions within the site. The next image is that same drone image from the June drone flight, and we've marked out in red the limits of openness, or the limits of cutting, in a sense, where the canopy is sparse. We've also indicated the areas where there was significant areas of tree blowdown from the 2021 October storm. And you may say, how did you come up with that kind of red line depiction? Other than by just viewing the image, we were able to use this layer from the drone, which gives us a elevation model, and we use that as well to kind of come up with that red line, basing that off the visual image. Based on that data, we then took the restoration proposal that we had presented to the commission prior, which had the number of trees tallied within the BVW and within the inner buffer zone, and relocated those trees within the areas that would need the canopy restored within the BVW and in that inner buffer zone area. As you remember, we're proposing replacement trees at a 2-to-1 ratio, so we're exceeding the number that at a 2-to-1 ratio, and then moving that so that we complete that that area to fill in the canopy. The last sheet is the Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors site plan that we used before, but we also included into the plan the trees that were historically uprooted and blown over that were cut within the BVW in the buffer zone prior to this recent event that we're commissioned for. So that was another item that the commission asked for some detail on, and Merrill went out and actually located those old stumps, have added to the plan. They've color coded the stumps so that you can see the older material, older stumps, and they're noted, and then the recent stumps are here in black. So we were able to, I feel, respond to the commission's request to do some more analysis on what the loss of the tree canopy was, and adjust the restoration proposal and come back to the commission. One other aspect that I know the commission's aware of, when this was first brought to the commission, we immediately put together a stabilization plan, and Joe implemented that so that this area that you can see where there was where it's light, that was all regraded so that it knocked down any of the rutting, seeded, and then covered with straw. We used a conservation seed mix so that everything is stabilized, and Joe was able to send some photos to Charlotte today to show that you know, everything's stable and is beginning to recover. So we have been actively bonding and making sure that the site is in compliance. With that, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Great. Thank you very much. Brad, I the only question I really have is, I know that a lot of what happened out here was of a concern that trees were lost during storms, and that there was concern that other trees would be lost. In this mitigation plan, I do see a couple trees that obviously they're associated with the buffer, but at the same time, they are pretty close to neighboring lot lines and stuff. Is that of concern to you or no?
Well, I think the intent of the original this past cutting was to alleviate the potential for trees falling into neighboring lots, creating a hazard.
Right.
This plan doesn't actually take into account that factor because I'm concentrating on restoring that 50-foot buffer zone. But at some point it could be an issue, but I haven't accounted for that into this design.
Brad, does this this is the same number of trees, you just put them in different locations based on drone data?
That's correct.
So when you, on the last image that you showed, you did an account of blowover trees or older stumps. How did you know if those were all blowover? Because when I was out there was, you know, there were stumps that were still in the ground that were clearly cut previously, and my hope was that those would be added to the mitigation number rather than just added to the mitigation number rather than, you know, just kind of put in with the blowovers, because they were the root balls were still on the ground. And
Sure, I can't say that they were all uprooted. I mean, the surveyors actually were able to to note the ones that were uprooted. These are old stumps that have, they are actually able to locate all the old stumps. They could have been from, you know, years or so, 10 years. I don't know the condition of all the trees that would have been, you know, damaged. I don't have a good answer on that, but they were cut because of storm impacts is what I'm aware of. As far as, you know, each tree, we don't have you know, that's before my time.
So basically what we're reading here is the orange ones were uprooted and they're noted as such. The black ones are recently cut and the yellow ones are historically cut. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. I couldn't read.
And Brad, you are replacing all three types of trees? One type, two types, three types? What's going on here?
Sure, there's a number of different species proposed.
I think he's asking about the color,
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I meant, you know, which ones you are replacing, you know, whether it's the old stumps, the new uprooted, and then the ones that were chainsawed. What we see here is equal to which trees? Am I being clear?
This is to account for the trees that were cut in early spring that are
Okay,
subject to this enforcement.
okay. This tells me, and I look at this, maybe I'm wrong, that there were no trees removed within the 50-foot buffer zone. Is that correct?
No, there
I-
were trees removed within the 50-foot buffer zone.
Yeah, if you go back, let's go back to the former one, please, Brad. Now, if I look at this, I see the red line on the top. Above that, I see 50-foot buffer. I don't see any trees above that red line. They're all below the red line.
So the red line is basically the limit of lost canopy for our study. The blue line here is the limit of the bordering vegetative wetland, comes in and along.
Yep.
The green line is the 50-foot buffer zone. And then the other
Yeah.
green line is the 100-foot buffer zone.
You might have chosen a different color than green, because I can't even see it, I'll be honest. It mixes right together with the foliage and all that, so for me to approve this, I'm gonna have that, somehow that line, black or something whereby I can see the 50-foot buffer zone and where the new trees are going in, please.
We can certainly
It's
change the
not
lines,
visible.
colors.
So I can see, if I go to the middle, I see the word 50-foot buffer.
Yes,
There are no trees going in between that and the BVW dotted blue line, as I see it.
that's correct.
Okay, so there are presumably no trees in that one section in the BVW that were cut down, excuse me, in the 50-foot buffer zone that were cut down.
Well, we have marked them on the plan. But the intent of the latest study was to add the trees into the area so that we cover any trees that were cut to reduce the canopy. So in that region, you can see there weren't any recent trees that were cut. And that's reflective in that image here. So we're trying to use that openness to fill in the space.
My question is, as I look to the center of your diagram, I see the word 50-foot buffer.
Yes,
That appears to be clear. There's nothing being planted there.
correct.
So you're leaving it, is that an open area?
No,
Canopy
this is
lift, or is it full of-
vegetated with the trees. You can see this
Okay,
is all the tree canopy as is.
okay, so that's a fully canopied area
Yes,
and no need to plant anything there.
that's correct.
Okay, all right, I understand.
Yeah, well, I'm to be honest, a little bit disappointed because I think my comment about the recently cut trunks that weren't cut in this necessarily in this last spring, they're not being accounted for. There's clearly a history of this activity that didn't that wasn't observed, and this, I think this plan seems to it's just moving trees around. I think the intent of last meeting was to add more to this, to make it more like it was naturally. And just moving them around it's not doing anything, in my opinion.
One aspect to that is that we're proposing trees at a 2-to-1 ratio.
Brad, let me see if I can focus your
Sure.
response a little bit. So my understanding is that Brad has proposed a planting plan that will result in a fully treed canopy in the areas closest to the wetland, regardless of whether the openness that you have now is because of storm damage or because Joe went in and cut it. So what you're looking for, as I understand it, is for mitigation to be provided on the site. As a practical matter, the commission really doesn't have any authority to tell somebody you have to go in and replant an area where trees were blown down by storms.
I didn't say blown down. I was interested in those that were cut in previous years.
Let me finish. But we're acknowledging that there are open areas on the property within the 50-foot buffer and between the 50-foot buffer and the BVW, where regardless of whether trees came down because of storm damage or because Joe cut them, that Brad has proposed a planting plan to have it revegetated, and he's spaced the proposed plantings far enough apart so that as they grow, their canopies don't conflict with one another and restrict their growth. So he's put together a planting plan that will get a fully vegetated dense canopy in that area. And with that, I'm going to leave it to Brad to explain his thought process further. That's what I want you to address, Brad, to clarify that thought process.
Well, just to go on to that, I mean, within the buffer zone, the trees that fell are no longer there. So not only did you remove those trees, which are part of the ecology, there's trees that are not added to this plan, like I've been saying, that were clearly cut within the last, 5 years, if that, which is what I was interested in having added to this mitigation plan.
I think we are including that in the sense that you're getting a 2-to-1 ratio of the trees that were cut. So, there's a good number of trees that are proposed for planting that are in addition to trees that were cut, still in that area. So that does account for past trees if you consider the 2-to-1 ratio. And there's only so much space that you can fill in to create a healthy a buffer zone and restore the wetland. If we were to cram in every inch of the space, it wouldn't produce a healthy restoration area.
The 2-to-1 ratio is really to account for potential losses of trees. So I would be looking for a 2-to-1 ratio of the actual number of trees cut.
I think what we're trying to do is to address the commission's enforcement order for the response for the cutting that occurred in the spring. As I mentioned before, we got out immediately and have been proactive in restoring the area. I think this is a more than adequate plan to restore the buffer and wetland. It would be nice to have some diversity and actually have some meadow area here and some openness for wildlife habitat, avian species and some meadow, but I didn't include that. But we are able to have some of that in the 50 to the 100. So
between the 50 and 100, you see that as a natural meadow evolving?
no, that hasn't been, we'd have to have some maintenance tasks to do that. We haven't proposed anything other than just the restoration of that area. It would be nice to do a meadow within the buffer zone, whether that be in the outer or inner. But I didn't propose that. We were focused on tree replacement, and that's where we were with the commission.
Charlotte,
Yes.
can I just ask for clarification?
Mhm.
The show cause hearing here, it's for trees that were removed this past spring, is that correct?
That was the initial reason for my the cease and desist letter and the show cause hearing. And then we had lifted the cease and desist to, deal with the erosion control. And then we issued an enforcement order for a restoration plan. So currently we have an active enforcement order on the property. The initial violation was for the cutting of trees done this spring without an RDA or an NOI in the buffer zones and the wetland.
So Brad, if my math is correct, you're proposing 38 trees at a 2-to-1 rate for 19 trees that were removed, is that correct?
No, it's in the, it's documented in the.
Sorry.
Sure,
So Brad,
that's
I think you
fine.
said 7 were cut. So in terms of the, not in terms of previous cutting activity, it was 7 in the BVW and 11 in the 50-foot inner buffer, and then 11 in the 50 to 100-foot buffer. So it was 22 plus 7 is 29 trees total in the entire wetland 100-foot buffer span.
Okay, so the diagram that was actually showing trees doesn't necessarily show every tree.
Shows every tree proposed. The
Well,
green trees are the 14 trees proposed in the wetland and the BVW, and the lighter colored trees are the 22 trees proposed in the buffer zone.
so based on 7 and 11.
Right, so
right?
there's the table of replacement. So there's 14 trees in the BVW, so that would be 7 times 2, and 22 trees in the buffer zone, obviously
right.
11 times 2.
Well, I obviously can't count, so.
But I'm blind, but I got that.
And the stump count was at what, 22? But
Stump
doesn't
count.
really distinguish between their.
Right, that of the recent trees, that's what the numbers was. 7 in the BVW when you go through and count up the trees in the BVW, and then within the inner buffer zone, 7, 11, and an 11.
29. Of the 29 trees that were
29.
felled, how many are still lying there? Which is what we would desire to happen.
I don't believe any of them are lying. I think they've been cleaned from the site. Joe, I can ask you to confirm, but I believe they've been cleaned, which is so that we don't have a downfall.
The trees that were either leaning or we thought posed a danger were cut. And there are still logs that were part of the enforcement order. If you look to the left side of the plan where it says proposed inner buffer replacement shrub, if you blow that up, you can see the logs that are still in place.
Within the 50-foot buffer zone, we require that the trees remain in place after they are cut or have fallen. Question, of the 29 trees that are cut or have fallen, how many are still there within the 50-foot buffer zone?
I don't have an answer on that. We could count up the logs that are on site.
I think what Joe has just indicated is that you've got quite a few of the logs sort of all gathered together in the area that says proposed inner buffer replacement shrub, that just those words are over where the logs are. If the commission wishes to have the logs sort of redistributed into the 50-foot buffer where trees had been cut out, I'm sure that either the logs themselves or it may be in order to avoid having large machinery go back there, you cut them into sections and take the sections of the trunk and put them in the wetlands. So you've got the wood placed in the buffer zone so it can decompose.
Well, I mean, ideally, that's what we'd like you to do. Whether it's practical or not, I think we'll have to have a discussion on that, right?
I guess with the current enforcement order that is active for the property, you know, obviously, you know, a restoration plan has been submitted and revised, you know, so again, the commission obviously can still review that, but in terms of a, you know, a general course of what to do with the restoration plan moving forward, you know, once the commission is satisfied, the options are, you know, either to keep the current enforcement order open, you know, because I think regardless, there should be an open permit, whether it's an enforcement order or an after the fact submission, to carry out this restoration plan and to monitor it. So the commission can choose to either, I think you can keep it open, but I would prefer maybe closing the initial one that requested a restoration plan, at least once the commission's satisfied, and then issuing either a new enforcement order or requiring an after the fact submission to get an order of conditions. Either way, an open permit, I think, is best to carry out whatever restoration is necessary and then come up with specific parameters, as Brad notes in his you know, letter, in terms of maintenance and monitoring of how we want to, you know, keep track of this area for the next couple growing seasons at the very least. But I guess it sounds like some commissioners still would like some more information, so maybe we could focus on that for now, but that's just you know, that would be my question, I guess, either for tonight or for possibly another night, of what do we want to do with the current enforcement order? Do we want to close it, keep it open, issue a new one, issue a, you know, require an after the fact submission? I think as long as we have an open permit either way. Not sure which one is the most feasible. I'm not sure if Mr. Watsky has an opinion there, but you know, that's just my general consensus once we've come to a conclusion with the restoration plan.
Charlotte, my problem with this is that we're getting our 28 or 29 trees. I understand. Probably should be more than that, but you know, the rules are the rules. What this place used to be was a forest, heavily shaded, with very, very little growth on the ground because of the sun being denied and the water being absorbed by the trees. What we're going to have a year from now, once these trees are in, is an area full of invasives. There's going to be everything imaginable growing in here. And I find that to be something that is an open detail, which is very important, which I think the owner and the project team has to deal with. How do we prevent this becoming an invasive forest while these small trees are getting established? Because I guarantee you in 2 years' time, Japanese knotweed, maybe Phragmites if it's wet, you're going to have all sorts of poison ivies and everything else growing in here, and it's going to be a horror show. And it's not exactly what we envisioned, nor what I think Brad is projecting in his calm talk. Mother Nature is going to take over. It's going to create a wildness to this unless we do something to prevent it happening. So how can we prevent this becoming what I would call a forest of invasives?
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. At least for Brad, you obviously feel free to jump in on this, but to answer your question, Eric, it was in Brad's proposed revised plan, he's saying the restoration area should be inspected each fall for non-native invasive or unwanted plants for a 2-year period. If any non-native invasive species are found, they should be uprooted, placed in trash bags and disposed of. In the event that any saplings within the restoration area are found to be unviable or dead, they'll be replaced with like, kind, and size. And then replacement plantings will take place when found or as soon as seasonal weather permits. And then, you know, obviously saying monitoring and reporting will follow the directions of the commission. So at least for invasives, you know, Brad, feel free to jump in here, but they're proposing, you know, each fall inspecting the area, removing the plants by hand. So no herbicides or chemicals or anything like that. And then removing them by hand and disposing them off site.
Thank you, Charlotte. Yes, at the end of the growing season, it needs to be reviewed thoroughly, and they can be hand pulled because it would be new seedlings. We wouldn't have it herbicide.
Brad, the area, the band of white that goes across, right? It stops in the middle and then continues on the left. What is that? Is that
That's
the
straw.
area?
That's the recently reseeded area with the wildlife seed mix. And
Okay,
that's straw to hold the seed in place
Okay.
with the soil.
all right. And you're confident that will be relatively free of invasives, or do you think that's still going to be an area of preoccupation?
Well, so far it's got the wetland seed mix that, I'm sorry, the buffer seed mix that's germinating. But
Yeah.
again, just as you're concerned, it's gonna need to be monitored and reviewed.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I can address the question that Charlotte just posed about how to move it forward. And I can actually refer back to a question, I think it was Mr. Eisenhower asked about trees that are close to the property lines of the houses that have their backyards up against this. And he was asking, is there any proposal to cut those trees down for safety? And the answer was no. We're looking at this, and my preference is to keep enforcement activities and permit activities separate. And so the plan that you have in front of you is a plan that's being presented for the commission's approval pursuant to its enforcement authority to restore an area that was altered without a permit. And my recommendation would be just to have the enforcement order issued saying we adopt or direct you to proceed with this plan and conduct the restoration as Brad has laid out with whatever additional conditions you may be mentioning. And Brad has already explained that there's invasive species management as part of it. In contrast, if you were talking about whether one could cut down additional trees now for safety purposes, that would be permit activity. And you file a notice of intent or a request for a letter approval, something like that to cut that down. So I wouldn't mix the two together.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say again that the count, the old stump count, there's a lot of trees and some of which if I were to like have to focus, I would be looking at looks like there's 6 in the 50, 1 in the wetlands. I don't think there's enough trees in this plan, based on, what we saw out there. There's already, not to change subject, but there's already knotweed out there. There's already invasive weeds out there. I would want to see more trees in this plan. And I know you're saying it's addressed to the 2-to-1 ratio, but in my mind, I think that these need to be in the total before the 2-to-1 ratio is made. Or this point is like, set.
I think it's safe to say that if you left this up to Mother Nature to re-inhabit it with trees, it wouldn't be 2-to-1. It's probably going to be 5-to-1 or some figure like that. All right. All you have to do is look in the forest around Cohasset, and you find much greater density of trees growing, and that's survival of the fittest. All right, Brad will say, well, that's not good horticultural because they're too close, but in the end, trees survive, and some come and some go, but it's much denser. Mother Nature's way of populating the forest than what we're doing here. So I agree with what Richard's saying. I think we need more trees here. I wouldn't be hidebound with a 2-to-1. I'd look for 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 if I could.
If I may, if we're talking about what nature does it by having the trees sprout from a seed. So you start with something that's only a couple inches tall. And that's not what we're talking about doing here. So there's a substantive difference. You're having trees planted that are, Brad, is it 5-gallon buckets or 10-gallon buckets?
Both.
Or combination. They're well on their way. It's completely different from just letting nature take its course. And so you don't want to go out and buy and haul in and plant trees so densely packed that they restrict one another, because then they won't grow as fast as you want them to grow. You want to establish a canopy that will be healthy.
Mr. Watsky, at what point does it become too densely packed? I guarantee you 3-to-1 instead of 2-to-1 is not densely packed. 7-to-1.
Yeah, Okay,
I,
wait,
when I make these judgments or, and present it, I rely on the experts. And that's why I asked Brad to talk to how did he conceive of the planting plan that he's presented?
Sure,
Well,
and a lot
well-
of these stumps are gonna stump sprout, and we're also, because they weren't ground down or removed. One of the unfortunate aspects that we have here is Beechwood Street. As you know, we have the American beach disease that's hitting everywhere. So a lot of that, just in general, we're gonna see a lot of beech tree death in the area. Obviously, you can't account for that, but a lot of those trees were beech. But yeah, we're gonna have it wasn't filled over, or there wasn't any soil disturbance outside that area that was a straw. So in addition to the plantings that were proposed, we're gonna have a lot of natural revegetation.
More trees. I feel as though
So-
I'm feel somehow I have to defend trying to put trees back after some guy goes out with a chainsaw and clear cuts this whole area and takes all the trees down and then removes the trunks, which he wasn't supposed to do. And now we're fighting to get Mother Nature reestablished there. I think that's wrong. Brad, we need more trees, and I'd like you to reconsider it, please. Thanks for planning, and I think this is falling on Richard's point. I think, we shouldn't have to sit here and have bruising talk about whether it's 2 to 1. I think 3 to 1 or 4 to 1 is probably more appropriate.
Yeah, but that's, Eric, we can't step outside our regulations, so.
Well,
I mean, that's what we're calling for. And then, Chris, I understand that you're saying that there's a lot more stumps out there, but my reason for asking Charlotte what this show cause is all based on is based on what got cut this year. So I don't know if we can extend it beyond. So I guess that's the question. Do we have an authority to say, because, first of all, do we have the expertise to say when those trees were cut and by whom they were cut? We can assume, we can make some assumptions, but we don't have the.
In terms of like,
Maybe we need a third party assessment then. I mean, because they were great on top. That's the extent of age, but they were not rotting in the ground, and using 2001 aerial image as a baseline when trees were clearly cut in 2020, maybe 2019. I mean, I'm not the expert, but they were not old. They were aged to the point where they were no longer fresh wood on top, but they jumped out at me, and I wasn't nitpicking. I wasn't trying to look for rotten stumps or anything like that.
So Brad, can I ask you to go back to the stumping diagram?
Sure.
So based on this diagram, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can you zoom left, please? Eight, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Is there anything more to the left? 18, 19, 20. So there's no, but I'm so there's 20. Nope, some of those are out of there. Sorry. 20 minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 14. So there's 14 trees shown as old stump. Actually, there's one was 15. There's one up in the orange there. Chris, do you think it's reasonable to assume that this survey is correct?
Yeah.
So is it would you, so if I'm saying, if I say there's 15 old stumps, in your mind, you would like to see 30 additional trees planted, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. And I don't know what they mean by old, like, they don't, that. It's not, yeah.
Okay.
Ideally,
Okay, Charlotte, I'm gonna ask you to take this to town council and ask them for their evaluation of this.
Okay.
And whether or not we can assume that any stump is considered a part of this enforcement order, or if only stumps that appear to have been cut this spring are part of this enforcement order.
I think I can answer I'll talk to council about it, but I guess in terms of authority, I mean, any previously unpermitted activity I believe is within our jurisdiction. The question is really the practicality of, where do you draw the line? Because we don't have anything in our bylaws or, to my knowledge, in the act about within a certain time frame. A lot of times retrospective violations are sometimes looked at depending on the commission, but the most common one that I've seen in other cases is, fill. So for example, if someone fills a wetland, that's an ongoing violation. But yeah, I'll double check with council to see what's most reasonable for a path moving forward to address, the current activity that was issued under the enforcement order, and then any previously potentially unpermitted activity. I can see what they say about that. But I guess it sounds like we wouldn't want a continuance for now. And do we want any additional edits to this, or do we want to just continue to July 6th to get an update from council?
No, I'd like to get an update from council. I'd like to know, I mean, obviously the applicant is suggesting that they're responsible for just those marked in black at the 2-to-1 ratio. We have commissioners suggesting that they should be responsible not only for the black, but for the yellow as well. All those within the buffer zone. And so I think I'd like council to weigh in and make the decision on that.
Okay, no, that's
All right.
fair.
So I'm gonna ask
so-
that we continue this until July the 6th, assuming we'll have a hearing that night.
Chris,
Okay.
there was another issue that came up in the last meeting that I think we were looking for to address, which was the I don't remember the term for it, but we were looking for some evidence that, the access agreement, or we were looking for like a proof, like a deed or something for the maintenance plan, or what was the term, Cheryl? Maybe you can remind me. That allowed that they were
The access path that's on the plan, or were you asking if there's an easement or something?
No, there was a reference to the old
The old notice of intent.
the old notice of intent, but it had allowed for I don't know, some activity within the buffer zone that didn't really line up with any of our understanding of, what we would allow today. We were looking for some.
Yeah, it was, and I think Joe may have more background information, but it was a 2008 notice of intent to install some drainage. And as part of that plan, there was this access path, that area of maintenance and access that was on the site plan. It was approved through an order of conditions and was closed out in, 2012 with a certificate of compliance. But I don't think it was clear whether or not the maintenance was allowed under the closed COC, and or if this area of maintenance and access was part of a deeded easement, or if it was just kind of what's on the site plan that was originally approved through an order of conditions and a COC.
Yeah, and there's no definition of what maintenance meant was ongoing, so that's something that needs to be clarified in my mind. So this,
Okay, I can maybe review that with council too, to see if we want to maybe include that as any sort of condition in a new enforcement order potentially. So but yeah, I'll circle back with council, and I will do you want to continue to July 6th, Chris?
Yes, yes. Is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Then you-
so
then
no
we're good.
no additional restoration plan edits at this time, just waiting on council, and then we'll circle back.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sure, we're gonna move on to some certificates of compliance.
Did we do minutes? Yet,
No, we didn't do minutes. I missed that.
sorry, Angela.
We have minutes for approval on March 23rd, 2023. Anyone have any comments?
None.
Like to make a motion to accept the minutes from March 23rd?
Second,
Having a motion and second, we'll take a roll call. Eric Eisenhower,
Eric Eisner, aye.
Kathy Berrigan,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0. Thank you. Okay, certificates of compliance.
All right, only got two. So 12 Hobart Lane, this was a notice of intent and stormwater permit. Do you want me to pull up I can pull up the as-built, I'll do that.
Did they do what they said or not?
There are a few deviations. Sorry.
Can you start to rate the deviations as like 1 star, 2 star, 3 stars so we can just decide?
Yeah, I mean, I can do that. It'll unfortunately be subjective though, but and unless something's blatantly obvious. So the deviations, these were pretty much all noted by the engineer in the COC request. So just to start, they had 2 special conditions. One was to install conservation markers along the limit of the wetland. I confirmed they did do that back in November. It was a little hard to find all of them this spring because the vegetation's overgrown, but they were silver markers that were installed along the wetland line and they're going to stay there. So they complied with that condition. And then the second condition was to submit a revised plan that had the geofabric installed within the detail of the stone tiered wall. So they did that before I issued an order of conditions. So they did comply with both special conditions. So the deviations that the engineer noted were the layout of the stone retaining walls. There were originally supposed to be 3. One was supposed to go up pretty close to the property border. And they were supposed to be a little bit more squared. And here, as you can see in the as-built, they're more rounded. So the reason why the 3rd wall was not installed was partially due to neighbor complaints and concerns about removing the trees that were going to be removed for part of the 3rd wall. So in discussing with the engineer, he said removing the 3rd tiered wall was not going to be an issue for stormwater management. So it resulted in overall less disturbance in the 100-foot buffer and partially in the 50 to not construct that 3rd wall. And then because they did not take down the trees that were in between 187 Atlantic Ave and 12 Hobart Lane, other than for any mini ones for the 2 walls, they were supposed to do 4 evergreen plantings right here. This as-built technically shows them, but that's not right. They're not planted here. They did not plant those as part of, because they didn't remove the trees, which are mostly Norway maples in between both properties for not constructing the 3rd wall. And then the plan called for a 6-inch berm at the edge of the driveway. Instead of a 6-inch berm, at least I didn't see the 6-inch berm. It was all covered in grass. They had just installed some granite curbing to prevent any safety, car accidentally backing up and going over the side of the stone walls. So the engineer didn't have any major concerns about that. And then that was pretty much it for the deviations that the engineer noted. I'll just note that there was a discrepancy in the site plan about a landscape plan. They did not propose a landscape plan. It was really just these 4 trees, but then they ended up not planting those because they didn't remove a bunch of trees that they were supposed to remove for that 3rd wall.
What were those 4 trees supposed to be?
Evergreens, 6 to 8 feet in height, native.
No name, no nothing?
Hold on, let me go to the approved plan. I don't think so. So this was the original design. And it was really just these 4 trees right here. He has a bunch of details about the planting, details, but really just, they were supposed to be just 4 evergreen, 6 feet in height, smaller. But since they didn't take out the Norway maples and other oak trees along this, where this third wall was gonna go, that's why they didn't plant the 4, because, you know, they didn't cut down what they were supposed to. And other than that, the only thing really left to do is a top coat on the driveway, but other than that, they have completed the work. And they complied with the special conditions with the exception of a few of those deviations that I just noted. And then my standard recommendation would be if we were to issue an order of conditions, that they, you know, obviously have to comply with no herbicides, et cetera, and all plantings must survive 3 full growing seasons. They did do some minor planting around the walkways here. So that's why I'm just suggesting 41 to maintain the plantings, even though it wasn't proposed in this original plan. They did do some, you know, native plantings along these little beds here. But other than that, does anyone else have any concerns?
Can you go back to the as-built?
Yeah. Oh, and the owner does have to record the long-term operation and maintenance plan, and he will do that before a stormwater permit COC is issued. So like, you know, we can vote on it, but I will make sure it's done before I issue it.
I think you have to make sure the top coat goes in and that it drains properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do we want to hold off until the top coat's installed?
They're trying to sell this house, right?
I don't think so.
I think they
I-
are.
I don't think so. These people next door sold the home. It's a new homeowner now, but I don't know. I don't
Can't
know
wait.
about, I don't know about these applicants. I don't think they haven't
Yeah,
said that.
why would they want the COC so fast if they're not done?
I'm not sure, probably just to get it off their plate.
Yeah.
But it's nice that people want to close their permits out instead of me chasing people. So do we want to wait? Sounds like we want to wait for the top coat to go in.
I defer to my distinguished colleagues.
I want more trees.
You want more trees?
Charlotte, if I remember correctly, the purpose of those 4 trees which were not planted was to provide some privacy to the property below and above.
Yes.
There's nothing
Yes.
there now. The fact that they left the trees on the left doesn't obviate the need for the privacy on the right. So I would say we have to have those 4 trees put in. The reason still remains.
Okay, yeah, I mean, they thought, you know, since with less disturbance, they didn't need to plant them, and I don't know if they've talked to this new homeowner, but, yeah, so if we want the 4 trees, we can plant the 4
Yeah.
trees.
I mean, 4 trees are not 4 trees. The purpose is the functionality, which is to insulate the property below and above from each other's back garden. All right, that was to give some privacy there. That was the purpose of them.
Mhm.
So and that still remains.
Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of the site plan, yes, but at least that was the request of the previous homeowners. You know, they wanted a wall of privacy, which the applicants were happy to do, but now those people have moved and there's a new person in here. I'm not sure I don't know if he cares or not, if there's trees here. I know he does plan to eventually come to the commission to plant some stuff behind the home. So he'll probably, you know, propose to make his own planting buffer. But if we do not want to, you know, because they were technically asking for essentially a waiver to not plant the 4 trees if the commission's satisfied with the work, but if the commission wants to see the additional plantings, we can tell them to do that. It was approved under the, you know, approved site plan, so.
I don't know what's gonna grow there. That's my concern.
You don't think it's gonna grow there?
I don't know what evergreen's gonna do well there. It's pretty
I'm not
wet.
sure. I mean, this whole down slope, you know, we walked it. It's
Yeah,
wet with the exception of this upland area, like this whole slope slides down and yeah, I'm not sure.
Chris, I think your eastern red cedars would survive there, but you know, I'm not going to. Yeah, it's really to provide some privacy and to separate the 2 plots, because there's
Yeah.
nothing there now except a low stone wall.
well, a vote of 2 just said more trees, so tell them to plant the trees and get the
That's
top
what
coat
I'm
on.
Okay,
Okay,
that's fine. So we will, well, I guess, defer until the work is done. Do you guys want to agree to that? Okay.
Yes,
That's
we
fine.
agree.
Okay, and then 34 Bancroft, this was just a stormwater permit. So they had some stuff to do when they came to us in the winter. So they have, at least to my knowledge, done it. So they finished all the landscaping. I'm just going to go through my photos here. I can pull up the as-built if you guys want me to, but they hadn't put in the final loam and seed. So the site, when I saw it back in the winter, was all dirt. So as you can see, they've definitely planted everything now. There were really no landscape plantings proposed, in terms of other than just restoring the site with loam and seed. So they did plant a handful of trees all around the property. That was really the big thing. And then the second thing was they had to locate the outlet pipes and splash pads for both infiltration chamber systems. So they did do that. The engineer marked it and updated it on the as-built. And I couldn't locate the inspection ports on the site, probably since someone put down the final loam and seed. But sorry, am I cutting out? I know I'm
No.
going.
No, you're not.
Okay, good. My video is. Sorry, I'm going to shut my video off for a sec. But as you can see, they did do the grass isn't like 100%, but it's definitely stabilized in terms of what it was before. They do have to locate the inspection ports, but other than that, they did finish the rest of the stuff and they updated the as-built. And Brendan located the splash pads for both infiltration systems. So, the grass is still, it's poking up, it's slowly on its way there, but they did finish all the landscaping and final grading. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns or? There was no landscaping plan with this permit, so that's why they kind of just planted whatever.
Okay, I'll make a motion to issue a COC for stormwater permit 21-27 at Bancroft. Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion in second, we'll take a roll call. Kathy,
Kathy Berrigan, aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Chris McIntyre,
Chris McIntyre, aye.
Chris McFarland, aye. That vote passes 4-0.
Unanimous.
All right. Updates.
That it?
Nope.
Oh,
Oh.
no, you don't want to do them? Okay,
No, I want you to do them. Eric's trying to go to bed already.
Too
sorry.
early.
10 Ocean
Dinner.
Ledge.
Dinner time.
Okay, sorry, I'll be quick.
Okay.
10 Ocean Ledge, the house is up. And as you guys can see, they're just finishing final grading and landscaping. So
Yeah.
they'll probably come to us at the COC either in a couple months or in the fall. 125 Doan Street, that's Will's place. So they put in the stormwater infiltration systems, everything looked okay. And they finished the addition. So really they just gotta, he's still debating what he wants to do with the detached barn. But other than that, he's just got to finish regrading, landscaping and planting. 318 Forest Ave, they started the demolition for the existing home and the horse paddock. So that started, and then I think they're practically done with their original stormwater permit to do that garage. So they finished all the landscaping and the driveway there, but now they're working in the back of the home under their other stormwater permit. So, that's ongoing. And then for other updates, just so you guys know, I submitted a grant application in combination with Hull to do a water quality assessment survey of Straits Pond, partnering with literally everybody. So that was fun, but we'll see if we get it. I'll keep you guys posted. They announce it in August. Unfortunately, Alex hasn't had enough time to review my edits to the boilerplate, so I'm sorry I keep dragging this along, but it is done. I'm just waiting for him to look at it, and the second he approves it, I'll bring it back to you guys and see if you guys are good with it before we add it to permits moving forward. And then we will add this either to the next agenda or maybe later in July, but we definitely need to do the appointments and liaison positions for the boards. And then Eric, we got you on the list for CPC, so we will, go through that. We'll go through CPC open space. There's a few boards that may or may not need to be on there. For example, I just found out we don't have one apparently for Harbor Committee, so that one won't be on the list. And then Turkey Hill is more of like a minor one where it's not really on the town website, but they meet once a year. And so I don't know if we need to do reappointments, if we want to just have one commissioner just be on the board in general, but we can figure that out. And Angela and I will prepare that for you guys. in another meeting.
Any,
And Eric, I think you applied for additional year. And then
Yeah.
Kathy, no pressure,
You,
but
you unlucky sons of a gun. I'm gonna be around for another 12 months to plague you. Looking
well,
forward to it. Thank you
the
very
select
much.
board will, the select board's got to do, their stuff too. But yeah, Kathy, have you sent your
I ha-
application
I have not, and it's on my agenda to do tomorrow.
yet? Okay, thanks, Kathy.
Yeah, it'll be in.
And yeah, Chris, I saw your email about that, so I'll look into that.
okay.
I am new to this process still, even though I've been here.
You're
almost
doing
2
very well.
Well, in terms of appointments and positions and stuff, I'm still new with that. Because I came in when you guys were just doing it the first year, and then the second year, we didn't really have anybody new. We just obviously voted in existing people. I do have some 48-hour issues, but
Wait,
Can I-
before, oh yeah, go ahead. That's fine.
okay. I'll start with the fun one.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys saw Facebook, but there was a piping plover nest that was found by Mass Audubon and a person who reported it to Mass Audubon. We don't know who they are. But yeah, so there is a piping
Great.
plover on Sandy Beach, Sandy Beach.
Ooh,
Yeah, so adorable, regulatory nightmares. So it's gonna involve a lot of conversations with, I've already reached out to Sandy Beach. I've reached out to town manager, obviously. So there's some events that are going on this weekend, and it seems like that's actively being discussed, so hopefully they'll come up with a mitigation plan. But basically there's a 50-yard radius anywhere a plover plops a nest. And the authoritative figurehead is Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program. So with the current beach maintenance plan we've approved right now, even though we don't have anything about BMPs for plovers, we do right now have a general condition in our boilerplate that any conditions from DMF or NHESP have to be strictly adhered to. So at least we have that covering us for now. But I talked to council a little bit this afternoon. It's my recommendation that at some point sooner rather than later, it's in everyone's best interest to talk to Natural Heritage, Sandy Beach, more importantly. So they need to talk to Natural Heritage, get the guidance, upgrade the beach maintenance plan, and move forward. It's definitely going to be more of a dynamic approach the way I see it right now, because obviously we're not going to know where the nests are every year. And it's going to impact, the biggest thing that I think that will be an issue with Sandy Beach Association is the time of year restrictions. So with an endangered species on there, DMF had recommended time of year restrictions, which Sandy Beach couldn't do and they didn't want to follow. But now that you have Natural Heritage involved, I don't know how much of a choice they have. So it's going to be interesting to see how the beach maintenance plan is affected with this latest development. So I'll keep you guys posted and we will see.
Thank you.
Wollaston Beach deals with it every year. They
Mhm.
they rope off the area and life goes on.
Yeah. Yeah, and at least I talked a little bit to people so far. Really, the only time the beaches are actually shut down if there's violations. So as long as people follow the rules and give the plovers their space, we shouldn't have an issue in Cohasset and people can still enjoy the beach. But if people are found, violating whatever parameters need to be put in place, and if, just one person could ruin it for everyone. So
Yeah.
hopefully people are on board. I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know what the general response is, but I know people are joking about, does the bear eat eggs? I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, so that's,
you have a lot more faith in human nature than I do. We have no dogs on the beach because a few ladies during the day disregarded the actions of their dogs. The lifeguards found the remains, and all the dogs got banned from the beach.
Yep.
permanently. So
yeah, because of the bacterial
don't
stuff.
overestimate-
Yeah.
Human
Yeah,
nature
so,
is not always reliable.
So we'll see what happens, but at least for now, we are covered under the order for now, just that whatever NHPS says, Sandy Beach Association should be following it, and I think they have to.
Is
Yeah.
there any action for us in terms of having a review of the beach maintenance plan because of this new conditions?
Yeah, so I will look into that because I need to kind of figure out a plan here to, for the commission to be proactive, because beach maintenance plans should really be dynamic documents. They shouldn't be stagnant. And everybody's got to do it. And things come up, you know, this piping plovers is one of the biggest examples. Like, things come up, you find out that there's certain information that maybe we didn't see the first time or even the fifth time. So we gotta just, you know, whatever new information that we're given with, we gotta take that and, you know, modify our decisions potentially. So I will talk to you guys about that and, you know, keep you posted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the fencing off of the, you know, the roping off of the areas to protect the actual nesting area, but you bring heavy machinery in there and just the seaweed, which is the foraging area.
Yeah,
And then, you know, not to mention just heavy equipment. in
Yeah.
general. I would say maybe if you can research what
Yeah.
the guidance has been for those specifically, those two.
yeah, I think the biggest obstacles are gonna be, you know, any time of year restrictions that NHSP says have to happen. And then, you know, the methodology for removing the seaweed. I mean, like you said, it's a foraging habitat for them, and, you know, it's, that's complicated. That's really tough. You know, I think it's gonna involve an active discussion with Sandy Beach Association and their staff, and, you know, it'll be a big discussion moving forward.
They're after they hatch. I mean, I don't know how long they nest for, but they're not there for that long. They're there for.
I
like
think
10
they quote unquote nest for, I don't want to make stuff up, but I think it's not that long. And then the little babies will forage in the tidal zone. You know, I think the mother does it to a certain point and then teaches the young how to do it. So, you know, removing seaweed in any of that area during a certain time when they're raising their young and how to forage, that's going to be problematic. And then I don't know the parameters for this, but when you report an endangered species, there is something about how it becomes priority habitat. And right now, Sandy Beach is not marked as a priority habitat. So I don't know how quickly that happens. I don't know when that happens. I don't know the process for it, but that'll be another thing that would complicate the maintenance plan if there's priority habitat, or if the whole beach is marked as priority habitat.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I heard someplace that there's gonna be a throng of people going down there on July 2nd for the fireworks.
The fireworks, yeah.
Is there any cordoning off of the nest?
I think that's actively being discussed. So the fireworks are going to be launched from a barge in the water. There's different opinions, obviously, on how far off it should be. I think 3/4 of a mile is done for other beaches with plovers. But yeah, they're going to have to section off an area on the beach where people probably can't sit or climb over the wall or sit on the wall. And then the fireworks can be launched from a further distance potentially. Yeah. The good thing that was explained to me and what I've seen in the research so far is plovers are relatively compatible with humans. So mild disturbance and even intermediate disturbance it's not highly likely that they'll abandon a nest. But obviously if people start climbing all over where their eggs are, yes, they're going to abandon the eggs. But at least for now, plovers seem to be somewhat compatible with humans just being on the beach at the same time. So that's a good thing, you know. It's not like they're super sensitive and they run off, but you never know. So yeah, that's one 48-hour issue. And then the other one was following up from one of our discussions from last meeting. Do we want to bring in the person on 108 Jerusalem Road who topped some of the trees in the 100-foot buffer, potentially the 50? We said we would look at the site plan. I put it in OneDrive for you guys, and I think I sent it to you guys. I don't know if you guys need any more time, but, you know, I mean, he stopped the work. We did stop him before he got to, you know, potentially doing anything else. But it was like 2, 3, maybe 4 trees that were topped in most likely all of them in the 100-foot buffer to the salt marsh. So he was going off of a plan that he thought was correct. I wasn't here in 2019, but it doesn't show all the wetland delineations on the plan. So it didn't show the one that's most important where the trees were. So I can send it around to you guys again, but
Did you send
2019 plan
separate? You sent a copy?
Oh, sorry, Eric, what was that?
Did you send this out separately?
Yeah, I sent it via email.
Okay, I'll go and check. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, just, I mean, if you guys think a show cause is necessary, just let me know. We told him that we'd let him know at the meeting last time.
And the number is which one?
108 Jerusalem Road.
Okay,
But yeah, he didn't cut the trees down entirely. He was just cutting the canopies off, but that is harmful to the tree. It's not just a pruning thing. And then for the bylaw stuff, I know this isn't really an issue per se, but just want to get the commission's general feedback. I spoke to the agent in Dedham, and I actually found out that their stormwater bylaw is stricter than ours, which I didn't think was, I thought that was unheard of. I thought we had the strictest stormwater bylaw. So anyway, they have tree regulations in their wetlands and stormwater bylaws and regulations about pretty much anything, any tree over 6 inches in caliper is considered a like basically a tree that they protect under their stormwater regs and under their wetlands regs. They have an equation or something to define multi-stem trees as well. And basically they have an equation where if you're cutting down a tree, it's 2-to-1 replacement of the tree, and 4-to-1 for shrubs if the commission thinks that the trees can't be replaced to that ratio. So Dedham has pretty strict regulations. They are in the process of even updating it even more. They have this general policy right now where they have this quote unquote 5-year look back under the building department, where they're mostly using it for violations right now. But basically, you know, kind of like what we just saw, if you're bringing someone in for a violation, they almost do a 5-year look back of the activity on the site. And right now it's not a hard regulation for them. It's more of like a policy, but it's something that they do use in form of violations and enforcement. So, you know, in terms of the tree stuff, the violation stuff, I admit I've taken a little bit of a, I kind of stopped looking at the regulations for a while I was working on this grant and all the other stuff, but I'm going to look back at Dedham and see if the commission, you know, if you guys are open to any of the stuff that they have in their policies, I'll put it in OneDrive for you guys and you guys can take a look. Yeah, it's strict. So I don't know if we want to be at that level or do something different. And then the last 48-hour issue was actually, I think this is for all of you guys, but for 26 Lampert's Lane, you know, the person who cut down the trees, we gave him a stormwater permit to restore the area. This was outside the riverfront. We had a special condition that the work was supposed to be done by June 1st. It's nowhere near done and probably hasn't even started. So my question for you is, how much do we care? Because this person will eventually, as we know, come back for a separate project through a wetlands submission. So my question is, do we want to bring this person in? Because he recently reached out via email last week. I haven't yet responded, but he was going to say that he was going to start the work, get a contractor, you know, maybe finish it in a few months. But again, we had a special condition that we wanted everything done by June 1st, and I don't think the work's even done. The erosion control barriers are in place, but I don't think any work has been done.
Gonna start the work now?
Yeah, I guess my question for you guys is, you know, normally the stormwater permits didn't have expiration dates. We gave him a special condition because it was an after the fact stormwater permit to fix restoring the site. But yeah, I guess my question for you guys is, how much do you guys care? Because this person obviously is going to come back in the future.
is there any practical benefit to enforcing it? I mean, is he going to do anything differently? Is there going to be
that's actually a really good, yeah, it's a great question, Eric, because the answer is I really don't know. I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. Like if I slap another cease and desist on this person, the work gets delayed even more. If I bring him in for a show cause hearing, the work's going to get delayed even more. So it's up to you guys. I mean, I talked to council and council obviously said he was supposed to comply and he didn't. So it's in the commission's hands to, what do we want to do with this, you know, violation of the permit, essentially.
What was required for the stormwater?
So a bunch of trees were cut down and it totaled 5,000 square feet of alteration or greater. So we wanted the site to be restored. He was going to regrade it. So we, you know, he submitted an after the fact stormwater permit to plant, you know, a bunch of trees around the perimeter, regrade that slope that was going down to the riverfront. And we wanted the area restored to prevent further erosion. So we, you know, given the interest of time, we gave him a stormwater permit, but we said, finish the work by June 1st. And we even said, you know, obviously, if not all of the work's done, we can understand that, but basically we wanted the majority of the work to be done by June 1st.
Yeah, he was gonna knock out a bunch of ledge and a bunch of this and a bunch of that.
And also, the building inspector thinks that he may need a special permit from planning board for the ledge removal under the stormwater permit that we gave him.
May I ask you this, Charlotte, if he's
Yeah.
gonna come to us for another permit, can we kind of
We can bring that up.
Can we
Yeah.
hold him to it before we approve anything? Or maybe we just tell him that we're not gonna approve anything until he plants the trees that he.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell him that. I can say, the commission will, I mean, it's kind of tough, and maybe I'll talk to council about that too, because it is kind of tough with continuances, you know, like if we want to continue and he doesn't, and we go outside the 21-day review period, you know, I don't want to lose jurisdiction. But I'll talk to council about that. But yeah, it's a tough situation of like, what do we do with this person? Because, you know, they're not going to go away.
Yeah.
Charlotte, what's the address?
26 Lambert's Lane.
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Oh, sorry, 26 Lambert's Lane.
Okay.
You were there, Eric. It was-
Yeah.
Yeah, we walked the site with the,
Oh,
the
it's that
clearing.
one. Oh,
He forced
Those guys.
Near into retirement. Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, my priority is getting the site stabilized. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I
it'll
don't wanna
never,
just let it
it'll
go,
never
though.
happen now. Anything he does now, he's
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
rough up all the soil and then it's gonna get hot and he won't get anything done.
yeah, I mean, do we want to just tell him to just throw down a bunch of loam and seed and leave it? I mean, he'll
late.
definitely, no matter
Too
what
late.
we say, it's going to be, you know, obviously debated and fought. And it's just one of those things of like, what do we really want from this person who's
Yeah.
come back with a future plan? My priority is to get the site stabilized, but I'm questioning whether or not we want to bring him in to discuss it, or if I just tell him to do it ASAP. And if, I don't know.
I bet whatever's growing out there right now, whatever weed
Weeds.
is growing out there is more stable than anything he can
Than
get
what he's gonna
done.
do now, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I could just say, I mean, you know, you have a stormwater permit, you're supposed to do the work by June 1st, and I can just note that for the record that it wasn't done. And, you know, that additional permitting may be required for the ledge removal, and then John can, you know, go forward with that.
Why, how about if you just hit him with a cease and desist? Based on the fact that he didn't meet the deadline and then he has to come in for a new permit.
Yeah, that's definitely, that's what we're allowed to do. I mean, if you didn't follow the condition, we can make the decision.
And do that.
Okay.
And
Who's- Sorry.
remember, Charlotte, yeah, the way these guys talk, reserve an hour and a half for them, all right? It's-
Yeah, you're punishing us
It
now.
just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, that show cause, I am not putting it on July 6th because we may not even have a quorum. So if he fights me on that, I'm gonna say we may not even have a quorum, so. I don't know if you actually, are you guys on vacation?
Can't you
that's
just
my-
send,
I'm
can't
here
you-
on the 6th.
can't
Okay.
you just send him a letter?
I could send him a letter, yeah, and just do a cease and desist and no show cause. You could do that.
Yep.
Okay,
That's what I would do and tell him he'll have to reapply.
Yep.
But I guess in a way we're spiting ourselves, right? Because we're not getting anything that we asked for.
no, that's the trade-off of like, I can play nice or I can play mean, but in the end, I don't know if either way is gonna get us what we want, you know, I don't know if he's gonna plant those trees, you know, maybe we could
Yeah.
issue I
Well,
mean,
they wouldn't live anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. He plans them now, they're dead as a doornail.
yeah,
I think if you throw a cease and desist at him and then then he can't do anything. And I drove by there yesterday and the place is just totally getting overgrown again. He really wants to get back out there, I'm sure. And so then he'll learn his lesson. He's not allowed to do anything.
okay, that's fine.
He can't
Yep.
even mow. Tell him he's not even allowed to mow.
I don't know if
The
I
area-
can do that, but I can say
Why?
you can't,
Why? It's an area of stabilization. Tell him he's not allowed to mow.
but it's outside the riverfront area. I don't know if I have jurisdiction to say that, you know? If-
Well,
and-
but within the riverfront, well, what about that whole, no, because there was that whole area that was disturbed in the back, which was considered riverfront, right?
The left side of the property, which is, you know, further away from the riverfront, that was all outside. So where he cleared the trees was outside of riverfront jurisdiction. But pretty much just, there definitely was over 5,000 square feet of disturbance outside of the riverfront area. That's why he
Oh,
violated the stormwater
all right.
bylaw.
Okay.
You
But no,
know,
I mean, I can issue a cease and desist and just say the permit was supposed to be done by June 1st and you didn't do it. And I've been more than generous to give you an additional, month to almost
That
try
sounds
and
good.
skirt past us. Yeah.
Go ahead, do it.
and
Alright.
if he wants to take us to court, I'm sure Chris will meet him.
Yeah.
Chris will
Yep.
meet him.
All right. Yeah, that's fine.
He probably is a lawyer. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I know.
Was this the guy that was gonna subdivide the lot like
Yes.
into four? and
Yeah, I
build
don't
it?
want
Yeah,
to,
yeah.
yep, no public discussion, but yes.
I was just, okay. I was just trying to
Mhm.
make sure I was thinking of the same
Yes.
Another
Same
serial
property, yeah.
builder. Okay.
But anyway, yep, that's all the 48-hour issues. Okay.
When
so,
when are we
thank you, guys.
back in person?
I have no idea. I mean, it was extended until 2025, but some boards are already meeting back in person. So,
2025?
yeah, the COVID provisions were extended until 2025 for
Great.
the ability to, do remote meetings. But yeah, I mean, if anybody has a strong preference for going back in person, I just have to figure out logistically which room and what we're doing. And, because select board does a hybrid setup where they have those
Yep.
owl devices and they all sit in the same room, but then they still have Zoom because I've called in remotely to select board meetings. So if we did go back in person, it would be something like that where, we would be in a room, but then there would still be Zoom capacity. So it might take some getting used to, but yeah, if you guys have a strong preference for meeting in person, we can switch.
Mm,
Well, I would only care if the applicants were there.
Yeah,
No.
so I'll double check, but I don't know if that means, at least with the provisions, it said that if you go to hybrid, they wanted to request, I don't know if it's official, but they wanted to request a majority of commissioners, but then the public could still call in remotely. So if we're just gonna be sitting in a room staring at people on screens, I don't think it makes sense, but if the applicants have to come in, like if they have to do that for select board, but at least with me, I called in remotely to select board meetings, so they were all sitting around in a table and I just called in on Zoom, so I don't know.
What if
I
we
mean-
got in a van and we just went to the sites and had all the meetings on site?
Just drive around with a camera, yeah.
That'd be good.
That'd be, what a great idea. All right.
Hey, maybe we'll get more commissioners that way because we do it such a weird way. It's a remote and moving public meeting.
Yeah.
And
The location is at all of these sites.
and I'm gonna get a cutout of myself to be in the van and I'm gonna drive.
There you go.
All right.
Yeah, no, if you guys have a strong preference to meeting in person, I would need to kind of figure out the parameters for that. But I know
Okay.
select board does hybrid.
Charlotte, to me, the major consideration is, can we do a better job if we meet in person? It's not clear to me. that
I
we
don't know.
can.
You guys did it before I started, so I don't know. Did you, I mean, the only drawback to.
I
Go
feel
ahead.
like we're taken more seriously when we're in person.
Really?
I'm
Mhm.
not so sure of that. I
All right, I'm
know,
speaking for myself.
yeah.
You're
I know
scarier
the
in person,
pre-
Chris?
Yeah.
The
exactly.
presentation of the charts and the maps is better over Zoom. Because we can share the screen. Very often when they put the tableaus up in the room, half the people on the commission can't see it. So
Yeah,
they're
that's
typing on
true.
Documents, trying to find the exploded copy and all that. And I feel much more lost when I'm in person, trying to follow the charts and the tables and all that, compared to what we do with Zoom, so.
I agree.
Yeah, if I had a screen that I like to scroll, I have another screen behind my computer, my where I can pull up the documents and kind of move around on my own. And if I could do that, I'd be up for meeting in person.
I'm gonna have to hire you to come and outfit my home. I need someone to give me a geek style operation here, all right?
Just 2 screens, that's all. But another screen, that makes a big difference to me.
Yeah, I should do
Did
that.
Jay always had a laptop at the meetings and he'd open
Yeah,
up
like,
on his
I think-
laptop.
I've seen select board people do that where they like bring in their own laptops, even though
Yeah.
they're being recorded sitting in a meeting, but again, that almost begs the difference of like, they could just do that at home, but again, I agree with you, Chris, in terms of the physical presence, you know, especially with violations, I feel like that may or may not make a difference. Like if someone has to come in and in person and explain what they did versus just sitting in their home explaining what they did,
Yeah,
I think the comfort level for that would change, but in terms of presentations for permitting, it's definitely, see, I'm biased, but it's much better over Zoom, but for violations, it sounds nice to like, you know, have the semicircle and be like, all right, state your case.
yeah,
But,
exactly.
Good point.
All
yeah.
right. Oh, we lost Angela, so I was gonna try to close down so she
Night,
could.
Angela.
yep, she's done.
All right,
All right,
motion to adjourn.
So moved. Thank you, Chris. Good meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye, aye.
aye, aye.
all
Thank
right,
you.
thanks, guys. Have a good
Thank you.
weekend.
Okay,
Bye.
good night,
Bye.
everyone. Thank you, Charlotte.
Likewise,
Good
thank you, guys.
luck in the triathlon, Eric.
Triathlon?
Stay away from the plovers.
The Cohasset
I know. Oh,
Triathlon.
yeah. Tell me, who's going